One affordable server can automatically back up your phone photos, replace Google Drive, host your websites, run your own VPN, and power hundreds of other self-hosted applications, all while keeping your data private and cutting down on monthly subscriptions. This is doc-ploy, a free dashboard that lets you launch and manage all of your self-hosted apps from one place with nearly 400 pre-configured templates you can deploy in a single click. In this video, we'll start with a fresh VPS, secure it, install doc-ploy, and connect it to a custom domain with HTTPS. Then we'll deploy software 3 different ways: a built-in template, a public GitHub repository, and a Docker Compose file. By the end, you'll have full control of your server, giving you the freedom to replace paid subscriptions, try out new apps, and keep your data private. So let's get started. Now, for this tutorial, you can use any Ubuntu server, but I'm going to use Contabo because they offer some of the best server resources for the price, which makes them a good fit for a self-hosting project like this. Contabo is also sponsoring this video and provided the VPS that I'm using here. If you want to check them out, this is the same page you'll land on through my link in the description. That link is an affiliate link, which means I may earn a commission if you sign up through it at no extra cost to you. As you can see, this virtual private server has 6 CPU cores, 12 gigabytes of RAM, and 200 gigabytes of disk space for just €6 a month. I'm actually located in the US, so let me change this to USD, $7.20 a month. So like I said, a really good value for the price. You can choose any one of these locations around the world. I'm actually going to stick with the European Union because that's included in the cost of the server. And as far as storage is concerned, you can double the amount of disk space for just a few dollars more per month. I'm actually going to do that for my server today. By default, the doc-ploy server one-click Immich is selected, and this is a good option for those of you who want to get set up with doc-ploy quickly. It is pre-installed on your server, but for today's tutorial, we're actually going to use an Ubuntu 24.04 setup, and the reason is because I think it's really important to understand how everything works behind the scenes. So like I said, we're going to install Docker, we're going to install doc-ploy, and go over some system administration tasks. Okay, moving on down here, you do have the option for some auto backups. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom and give ourselves a password for our server, and then click next. Go ahead and fill out this information, and then meet me over in your customer panel where you will see your virtual private server's IP address. So what we want to do is copy that. And then if you're on Mac or Linux, open up a terminal window. And if you're on Windows, open up a command prompt. What we're going to do is log into the server via SSH. So it's going to look something like this: SSH root, which is the default user, at the IP address. Hit enter. First time you'll see a message like this: are you sure you want to continue connecting? Type yes, hit enter, and then go ahead and type the password that you just created for your server, hit enter, and now we're connected to the virtual private server. Now, it might be tempting to want to dive right into things and start installing doc-ploy, but there are a few things that we want to take care of, like we don't want to be using the root user. There's probably some updates that we have to install, and we want to enable some security features. So let's start with that. Now, if you're new to this whole virtual private server thing, Contabo has this best practices to secure your VPS help article. I definitely recommend checking that out. In addition to that, I have a script that takes care of a lot of the things that I just mentioned and more, and that's what we're going to be using in this video. The script is on my GitHub, so feel free to check it out. It's right here at setupdocker.sh. And here's a quick glimpse of what that looks like behind the scenes. Now, what we want to do is get this script on our server. And the way we can do that is with this command right here. Now, this is a full written blog post that accompanies this video where I have all the commands that we're going to be executing. So rather than typing this out, you can just come in here, copy this to your clipboard, and then back in your terminal, we'll go ahead and paste that in, and that's going to pull that script down onto our server and execute it. The first thing is to create a new user. I'm going to pick Tony, give him a password, and confirm it. And then you can go ahead and skip all this stuff here just by hitting enter, and then we'll let this script do its thing. Okay, so the script just finished. The last step was installing Docker, so that should be good to go. It did require a reboot, so it did that automatically, and it gives you instructions here. We want to reconnect using our new user, so let's copy and paste that, hit enter. And now we are back. Now, just to confirm that Docker was installed properly, let's go ahead and run the docker hello world command right here, and the -rm will remove that container right after testing it. So hit enter, and basically if you see this hello from Docker message right here, that means Docker is installed and ready to go. So let's move on to the next step, which is configuring the firewall. Now, the script that we just ran enables a firewall and only allows port 22 to be open, which is the SSH port, as you can see here. That allows us to log into the server via SSH, but we need to also open a few more ports. So back on my blog post, go ahead and copy and paste these additional ports that we want to enable. And as you can see here, in addition to port 22, we're allowing incoming traffic on port 80 and 443, which is the HTTP and HTTPS ports. And we're going to need these open later for a couple demo applications that we're going to deploy with doc-ploy, specifically Kutt, which is a URL shortener, and Immich, which is a self-hosted photos backup application. And then this other one, 51820, that is for WireGuard VPN that we're going to be setting up later. So those are enabled on the IB version 4 and IP version 6 protocols. Now, in addition to the firewall running on our actual virtual private server, we want a additional layer of firewall security, and that's going to be done at the network level. So back over in your Contabo customer dashboard, what we want to do is come down to the network services and firewall tab here, and let's create a new firewall. We'll just name it something like doc-ploy firewall and then create. And then basically what we want to do is set up those same firewall rules at the network level. So we can come in here under inbound rules. Let's add a new firewall rule, and we'll do one for SSH, protocol TCP, and port 22. For the sources, you can choose any, which would allow any device on any network to connect to your server via SSH, but that's not a good security practice. I want to limit that just to my IP address here. So in order to do that, you can go to a website like ifconfig.me. This here is my public IP address, so I'm going to take that and paste it in here, so that way only this device can connect to my server. So we'll add that rule. The next one will be HTTP, and for this one, we do want to allow any device to connect to the applications hosted behind that port. Similarly, HTTPS, same deal, any source. We'll also add one for WireGuard, and for this one, the type of traffic is going to be custom protocol UDP, ports that 51820, and then sources will also be any. And then one last one we need for doc-ploy, just for the setup. This is going to be a temporary one. It's also going to be a custom TCP, ports 3000, and that's just going to be from our IP address again. This is, like I said, a temporary one. We're going to come back in here and delete it, but we just need it for the setup of doc-ploy. So after all that, your firewall rules should look something like this. The last step in here is to click this active VPS tab, and what we want to do is to assign the firewall to our virtual private server. So for the doc-ploy firewall, here is our virtual private server, and we will confirm that. And at this point, we can proceed with the doc-ploy installation. So let's go back to our terminal window, and we'll execute this command to pull down the doc-ploy install script from their official website, and then execute that. Type in your password, and that's going to go ahead and do its thing. As you can see, Docker has already been installed. We did that earlier. This usually takes like a minute or two, so I'll catch back up with you when that finishes. Okay, doc-ploy is installed, and it's accessible at this URL. So let's go to that URL in a new tab here. And as you can see, this is the setup page for doc-ploy. Now, we don't really want to set this up under the IP address. It's better to use a domain or a subdomain. For me, I am using Cloudflare for my domain name registration for jarlanta.com, which is what we're going to be using in this tutorial. It doesn't matter where you registered your domain name. The process is going to be relatively simple. Go find the DNS settings for your domain name. And what we want to do is add an A record for a subdomain called doc-ploy.jarlanta.com. In my case, it's going to point to the IP address of my virtual private server. And if you are using Cloudflare, turn off this proxy toggle for now, and we'll save that. And while we're already in the DNS settings, let's go ahead and also create the subdomains for the test apps that we're going to deploy later. We'll create one subdomain for our URL shortener at go.yourdomainname.com, one for our VPN dashboard at vpn.yourdomainname.com, and one for our photo library at photos.yourdomainname.com. So at this point, your DNS record should look something like this, and it might take a few minutes for the changes to take effect, but once it does, we can stop using the IP address for doc-ploy and go to our subdomain instead. Make sure you include that :3000 just for the setup, hit enter, and the same page loads here. So let's go ahead and set up the server, and we'll click on register. And this is your doc-ploy dashboard. Now, we'll get into some stuff in here, but the first thing that we want to do is to enable HTTPS since we still are not secure at this point. So under settings, go to web server, and then type your doc-ploy domain name and your email address, toggle on HTTPS, and for the certificate provider, choose Let's Encrypt and save. Now, you might have to wait a few minutes for the SSL certificate to be issued, but you should be able to go to HTTPS, your domain name without the port. Let's see if that works for us. And there we go. We see our HTTPS up here. That means we can stop using this temporary port. So there's two things that we have to do. One is back in your terminal window, we want to execute this command, which removes that publish port 3000 from our Docker container. And then we also want to go back into our Contabo firewall and remove the rule for port 3000, which is this one right here. So we'll just click delete and confirm that. All right, at this point, our doc-ploy installation is complete. And at this point, the rest of the tutorial is going to be showing you how to deploy those 3 test applications. And we're going to do each one in a different way. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we want to do is to create a project, and we'll call it something simple like self-hosted apps. Okay, and now that we're in our self-hosted apps project, we can create our first application. It's called create service. In this case, we will come down to a template. And as you can see here, there are a bunch of pre-configured templates that you can literally one-click install on your server. I know AdGuard is a popular one. They have NAN on here. There's Ghost and WordPress, Nextcloud, and there's a whole bunch more. But for this first app, we're going to be installing Kutt, which is a URL shortener. So search for that and click on Create. Now we see Kutt here, so click on that. And basically with the template, you get a compose file down here that's pre-configured for you. There are a couple changes that we want to make here. So under the environment tab, these are all the variables that the Docker compose file reads in. So for example, your default domain is defined over here in your environment file. So instead of the default domain, we want to replace that with our your domain name subdomain. And then for trust proxy, we want to make that true instead of false. And that just allows for better tracking with our URL shortener, which I'll show you in just a second. So let's save those changes. And then under domains, we want to do something kind of similar. So we'll edit that and replace the host with our subdomain. And then down here at the bottom, we want to enable HTTPS and choose Let's Encrypt as our certificate provider and click on update. If you want to, you can validate the DNS to make sure everything looks good. That looks good for us. And finally, under the general tab, let's deploy this application and click confirm. All right, that looks good. At this point, we can open up a new tab and go to our domain. And here we go. So let's go ahead and make an account for this. All right, and here is your Kutt admin dashboard. So just to give you an idea about how this works, basically we want to go from a short domain name with a slug to a long domain name. So for example, anytime somebody goes to go.jarlanta.com/doc-ploy, they'll be redirected to this URL right here. So let's test that out. We'll create that short link, copy this, and then in a new tab, we'll paste that in, and that redirect works just fine. For our next app, let's deploy a self-hosted VPN. And for this, we're going to use WG Easy, which if you haven't heard of that, as it says here, it's the easiest way to run a WireGuard VPN. So back over in our doc-ploy dashboard, just like before, we want to come up here and click on Create Service, but this time let's choose Compose. And we'll name our app WG-Easy, and then click on Create. Then we'll click on into that. And while you can sign into GitHub to deploy, what we're going to do is actually come over here to the Git tab and reference a repository URL directly, which is going to look for a Docker Compose file by default. So we could technically reference this Docker Compose.yml file here on the official WG Easy repository. But through my testing, I noticed that it wasn't reliably working for a doc-ploy setup. So what I did was I created a copy of this file on my own GitHub repository here and made just a couple changes to make sure that it worked well on doc-ploy. So we're going to reference this YML file. So in order to do that, we'll copy the repository's URL here, make sure it says HTTPS, and we'll copy that, come back over to doc-ploy, and then paste that in for the URL. And for the branch name, that is called main, and then finally click on save. All right, now just like we did before, we'll go into the domains tab here, and this time we'll click on add domain, and then you'll have to click on this refresh button here to look at the repository, and that's going to allow you to select WG Easy from the drop-down menu. For the host, we'll do vpn.your domain name. Coming on down here, the container port for this one is 51821. And if you're paying attention, this is the other port that we were using was 51820. The 51820, that is for the actual VPN traffic. This one here is just for the web interface. And again, we're going to be accessing that via URL, or a domain name, I should say, so we don't actually have to expose this port. Finally, like before, enable HTTPS and choose the Let's Encrypt for the certificate provider, and then click on Create. For good measure, let's validate the DNS. That looks good. Back in the general tab, we will click on deploy. Give it a minute or two and then open up a new tab and go to your subdomain vpn.yourdomain. And we'll walk through the WG Easy setup. So click on continue, create a username and password, and then click create account. We don't have an existing setup. Your host will also be vpn.yourdomain and keep the port 51820, click continue, and then we'll sign in. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is create a new client. So each device is going to have its own configuration. So I'm going to make a profile for this computer that I'm on, my MacBook Pro, and create that. Now let's download that onto my local computer. If you want to do it on your phone, you can send it to your phone. And here it is. I have the official WireGuard app on my MacBook, which I got from the Mac App Store. So I'm going to open that up and import tunnel from file. And then I'm going to choose that configuration file and click on import. And then we'll allow WireGuard to add VPN configurations if you're on a Mac like me. And before we activate this, I want to check our IP address before and after we activate it. So let's use this time Cloudflare to check our IP address because it has geolocation. Before, we have the same IP address, and there is my location in the United States. Now let's activate that profile. Okay, the profile is active. Let's refresh this page. And now we see my VPS's IP address, and my location is now somewhere in Germany, which confirms that my device's internet traffic is being routed through my VPS. And then we can see that happening in real time back in our WireGuard admin dashboard here, where we can see our MacBook Pro client with the upload and download traffic. The last app that we're going to deploy is a self-hosted photo and video management solution called Immich. And as you can see here, it is very popular. I've been personally using this for the past over a year now, and it can completely replace, your Google Photos and your iCloud photos. So let me show you how you can set this up. Let's go to here where it says 326 tags. It could be different for you. We want to pick the latest tagged version. At the time, it's 3.0.3. And then to browse the repository at this location, we'll click here. And just like before, we were looking for the docker compose.yml file, which in this case is under the Docker directory. And what we want to do is open this up, and then we'll copy that, and then back over in doc-ploy. This time we'll do create service, same thing as before, compose. We'll call it Immich, compose type of Docker compose, and then click on create, and then we'll open that up. And now this time we're going to go all the way to the right here where it says raw, and then we'll paste that in. So what's going on here? Basically, this is going to deploy 4 containers, one for the Immich server, one for machine learning, one for Redis, and one for a database. And as you can see here, this is referencing environment variables. So let's take care of that next. Go to the environment tab, and then back over on GitHub. Let's go up a level and then find the example.env file. We'll copy that. Back over in doc-ploy, we'll click the eyeball and then paste that in, and then go ahead and set your time zone and pick a strong password for your database. Okay, that looks good, so we'll save that. And actually back under general, there is one other thing that we wanted to change. In the raw compose file, we don't actually have to expose port 2283, so we're gonna get rid of that. And then we'll come back down here and click on save. All right, then one last time, come over to the domains tab, add a domain, and we'll click the fetch button like we did before. And this will be associated with the Immich server, which is the web user interface. For the host, we'll use our photos subdomain. The container port is that 2283 one that we just took out, and that's okay because that's going to be all handled internally. We don't need to expose that to the outside world. And then just like before, enable HTTPS and get a Let's Encrypt certificate and click create. All right, validate that DNS. That looks good. Come back to the general tab and click on deploy. All right, it looks like our deployment is done. So let's open up a new tab and go to your photos subdomain. And that's great. Welcome to Immich. So let's quickly go through this setup wizard. First, create an account, and then we'll sign up and log in. Okay, moving right along for the theme. Dark is fine. Language, server privacy, user privacy, storage template, backups. Don't forget about the 3-2-1 backups. Make sure you have 3 copies of your data, 2 local copies, and 1 offsite copy. And then of course they have mobile apps for both iOS and Android, which allows you to automatically back up your phone's photos. So click on done, and there you go. So what I'm going to do here is just drag on some images from my desktop. Of course, like I said, you could hook it up to your phone, or you can add media from other sources like I'm going to do here, and that's going to just take a minute or two to upload. And there you have it. This is just a simple example, but one of my favorite open source applications, but we'll save that for a future video. Doc-ploy is only one way to turn a VPS into your own application deployment platform. In the next video, I'll show you Coolify, another popular option that solves a similar problem but takes a different approach. I'll see you over there.